We're here now, present, in this moment, in every moment of all times. We want to start today with the topic of changing stories. It's been a lot on Kosta's mind over the last few weeks. He was finding new layers of understanding. He would pull back into wider perspective and then zone in to ask more questions, and pull up in a wider perspective and zone in to ask more questions, and pull up and zone in and zoom out and zone in. In other words, this day's been so satisfying, so comfortable for him on this particular topic, as it was caused by observing his favorite sport, as he is observing this Grand Slam tournament and his favorite player in action. Not only one, many of them, but especially his countrymen. Observing the story and the amount of story that he wanted to change, his desire to change this big story. On one side, records against him, and on another side, his desire to beat all of the odds. For him to change this story when everyone is in on that story. And so we want to bring that to your attention and start this broadcast with that. How often do you get to the place of steady by changing the story? And how frequently you feel steady and then go to change the story? Because there is the big difference in those two aspects. In other words, you can be the only one in a place of story. Let's say someone sees you as something that you are not. In other words, someone is trying to cheer you on. Someone is standing on this place of steady and calling you to join, calling you to see yourself a little bit more from the wider perspective. And you are then inclined to change the story to match the story of others because you want to go to steady on that particular topic. But then oftentimes you have an opportunity from the place of steady to go and play with variety of different topics and see, as we often say, where you can go to look for trouble. What is the story that you can beat the odds for? Not for any other reason, but because you feel so steady that you're looking to see what is the next thing and the next thing and the next thing that can reflect you more of that and more of that and more of that. This is this feeling of having such level of steadiness that you take on some of those bigger topics in your life, that you take on some of those stories you've been saying for quite some time, stories you've been saying not only for weeks and months, but for years, maybe even decades. And not only the stories that you've been saying and nobody else knows, but stories that everybody's been saying, and then you want to find a different angle. You feel so steady to look about that topic from a different perspective, and a different perspective, and a different perspective. And in that measurement, oftentimes you go back to that story, you join everybody to that story, and then you come back and then you start saying it differently. And then you go and back to that same story, but then you stay longer in your new story until eventually, even though story has been still dominant with everyone else, you start shifting it so quickly that it becomes you, that it becomes so evident within you that this new story is so present that even while you're observing, even while everyone else is talking the old story, you can reverse that story and invite everybody to join in a new story. And so this example that Kosta has just witnessed, observing his favorite tennis player take on that massive story. His opponent has lost only 2 out of over 100 matches in this particular tournament. And he was the last one to beat him 6 years ago. And then knowing and saying this story even himself, that this other guy is pretty much unbeatable on this particular court, has been changed. As Kosta was observing that match and saw the differences in the outcome that is coming based off of that story being said on a press conference before, that knowing, getting into something, that has been a tremendous Really, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to shift that when everybody is on that story. But this example, so precious, so direct, so clear that even those experiences are possible. Now, we're not saying for you to go and look for trouble when you're not steady, but we want you to know that even though the story is the same for everyone around you, when there is collective, a lot of focus on the same topic. It can be the sporting event and the history and statistics. It can be the virus. It can be the war. It can be any story that you do not want it to serve you anymore. In other words, that you want to shift your attention to. You can do that even though you might be the only one or the first one to generate that new idea, to see that new story. And the first one, not only to see it, but to see it and not drop it, but to stubbornly, in every iteration of revisiting that topic, get another glimpse and another glimpse and another glimpse and another glimpse and another glimpse of steadiness of the new story until that new story tips off. And not only you see it, but everyone else instantaneously joins you in that same story. And so we thought that would be an interesting and exciting way to start today's broadcast. We're excited to hear what's on your mind today. Go ahead.